So the idea, you know the old berm shape? You're old enough to remember that like I am. You're not. But various studies claiming that you see. But I think that's why people are so nervous. Yeah. Great. And then you'll see yours, and then they'll see mine. And these are going to be used. We've done this before, but it's a smaller.
Yeah, we are.
I know the wind has
No, I get a lot of I mean,
shock and awe, attack and invasion of Iraq. And we're here today to stand together and remember that so many people in this country and so many people in Iraq do not want us there. And that we will not stand for more U.S. military invasions anywhere. So let's do a little chant to get ourselves excited, huh? Occupation is a crime, from Iraq to Palestine. 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 So there's lots of folks here representing various sectors of our Syracuse grassroots community of folks that have been working tirelessly to educate the public about the devastating costs of the war on the people of Iraq. So there's a bunch of speakers, so let's welcome Jessica Maxwell from the Syracuse Peace Council. Thank you so much for coming out today. As Ursula mentioned, it was first in 2003 that the U.S. invaded Iraq. And ever since then, the Iraqi people have been living in conditions that we would never tolerate for ourselves and that we should not tolerate for other people. Yesterday, many of us were part of another demonstration, a press conference, to speak out about the humanitarian crisis unfolding partly because of the nuclear reactors in Japan, and to talk about what's happening there with that humanitarian crisis. And one of the things that I think particularly struck me about having these two events side by side was to know and to see the frustration of how little we can do now for the people of Japan, that we are just waiting to hope that somebody can prevent a full-scale meltdown from happening there, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's already in process. There's no way for us to really intervene effectively. But that's just not the case in Iraq. We have control over that situation in terms of what the U.S. role is there. We have a way to intervene. There are things we can do. We can prevent our country from making the situation worse, from continuing to occupy a foreign people that don't want us there. That's the place where we can make a difference. And unfortunately, as we see calls for humanitarian intervention in Libya, we know that the role of U.S. foreign policy has been to cause humanitarian crises rather than to solve them. And right now we see that by seeing that if we look at the refugee populations around the world, that Iraqi refugees now represent the second highest refugee population in the world. Close to 2 million Iraqi people cannot even live in their own country now. That did not begin until the U.S. invasion. That humanitarian crisis is a direct result of the U.S. invasion and ongoing occupation of Iraq. That's a humanitarian crisis that we could have prevented. And that's why we're here today, because we see so much suffering around the world, and we want our role to be to minimize and to end that suffering, to bring some relief rather than to be perpetuating and increasing the suffering that's happening around the world. So we thank you for coming out and standing with us in an attempt to do something to bring an end to the occupation. We can make a difference. We see now our senator from New York State, Senator Kristen Gillibrand, is now introducing a bill to call for a U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. I am convinced that that is a result of her knowing that her constituents do not support the U.S. intervention in Afghanistan either. That's the kind of difference that we make when we come out and we're in the streets and we talk to our elected officials and we talk to the public and we demand that the U.S. stop these overseas interventions that we cannot afford in terms of their humanitarian impacts, their financial impacts for us, or any of their impacts around the world. This is simply a role that the U.S. cannot continue to play in our world, and we thank you for coming out today. Iraqis are not the enemy. War is not the answer. Iraqis are not the enemy. War is not the answer. Iraqis are not the enemy. War is not the answer. Our next speaker is a local mother who has felt the pain of the Iraq War personally, and we welcome Sherry Ayala.
Hi, thank you for coming here today. Okay. Sir Winston Churchill said, "I never worry about action, but inaction." I'm a mom of an Iraq vet. My son served in the Marine Corps as a sniper as part of the surge. He came home with an other than honorable discharge, which as a result of that precluded him from benefits within the VA system. I knew immediately something was wrong with my son, and I had to step into action to begin to advocate on his behalf, which I did. He has now been rated by the VA as 100%, which with post-traumatic stress disorder and mild brain injury. These effects will be with him for the rest of his life. He's going to have to learn, as we are, his family, going to have to learn to support him. The effects on my family, immediately upon my son going over, his brother and sister went into a mild depression, one that I could not help snap them out of. Their schoolwork suffered. They couldn't get motivated. Their brother was in a war zone. Who cares about trigonometry or biology? That was unimportant, and I could understand that, so I had to back off with my standards. There are many, many veterans out there who cannot advocate for themselves. And we as a community need to step up to support them. There's an organization called Support Troop Networks that will do that. I also want to share with you in my research and preparing for coming here, I received from a friend congressional testimony that was given in September of 2010. A gentleman who is part of Veterans for Common Sense says, "Congress and advocates need additional, accurate, and consistent information in order to understand the full scope of this issue with our veterans being discharged in a manner that precludes them from any benefits for help. My son and many more like my son suffer from the invisible wounds of war, which consist of PTSD and mild brain injury. They have now since been dubbed the signature wounds of war." I'm asking all of you to, as a community, to step up to help our veterans as they come home so that they can assimilate back into our society. This is how I ended my son's correspondence when he was over in theater. It was Philippians 4 through 13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And you all can too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry. Next, I'd like to invite Magda Bayumi to speak. Magda is a tireless activist and a member of the Central New York Mosque.
Eight years ago, we went to war. And 8 years ago, we heard all the lies. Watch out, Saddam Hussein will attack us. Watch out, Saddam Hussein has nuclear weapon, has weapon of mass destruction, and has chemical weapon. We heard it all, and some people believe it. Some people believe that all of this happening in Iraq. We went to war 8 years ago. We had surplus in our economy here. And our country were moving in the right direction. But we went to war. Only to find out that it were all a lie. There is no chemical weapon or weapon of mass destruction or biological weapon. Only to find out it was all a lie. Then we start to hear the reason we are in Iraq were that to give the Iraqi the freedom, to give the Iraqi the democracy. So it turned out again, it was all a lie. Democracy, as we all know, and freedom is not to be given, but is to be taken. And we all know that. Today, and after 8 years of war, and 1 million Iraqi dead, and over 4,000 American dead, we are still at war. Iraqi does not have any democracy or any freedom. And our economy is going down. Iraq today has become the most insecure country in the Middle East. Today, when people leave their home, they say farewell to their family because they are not sure if they're ever going to come back again. They don't know if they're going to be die on the way of going or coming. So security is not there anymore. Education is going down. They have limited electricity, limited clean water, if there is any clean water. Nothing is safe in Iraq today. Today, we have one of the worst deficit in our country here. Our education is slipping, and our economy is in the rock. We need to stop. We need to stop this war, and we need to bring our troop home. We need to bring our troop home and give them the right of their the right we promised them to have when we send them there. The right for their health and the right for their benefits. So we don't send people to war and abandon them afterward. We also need to make sure that what we broke in Iraq gets be fixed. Enough, enough, enough. Enough of the lie, and enough of the deception, and enough of the people in Iraq suffering because we decide to go to war. We want to make sure that we leave Iraq better than we bring it in. We need to bring the troop home and leave the Iraqi to fix their own country. They were capable of fixing their own country before. But as they say, if you break it, you pay for it. We need to pay for it. We need to break pray for what we broke in Iraq, for them to fix it. Iraq is resilient people, and they will be able to do it again and again. We just need to get our hand out of Iraq. Thank you.
Thank you, Magda. Before we go on, I want to encourage everyone, to talk to people and let them know that you came to this demonstration today, because the only way that we can get out of these wars is to make a big stink about it and let our politicians and our neighbors and people in our communities know that we can speak out against U.S. military interventions that are killing innocent people abroad. And so I would encourage you, there is a sign-up sheet. Make sure that you're in touch with the Syracuse Peace Council. Make sure that you're in touch with the Answer Coalition, and that we're doing things and getting together so that, to end these injustices that are occurring in our names. And also, I want to encourage folks, there's going to be a large demonstration in New York City on April 9th, and the Peace Council is going to be sending a bus. And we're going to be joining people from all over the Northeast to stand up and say, we want our troops home now. We need to be investing in human needs. We cannot be wasting resources, wasting people's lives in other countries. And so now I wanted to invite up someone that wants to talk about their firsthand experience as a Marine, learning about what U.S. imperialism really means. Howie Hawkins from the Onondaga County Green Party.
Hey, Howie.
In 2004, I ran against Jim Walsh. We had a debate, and I said the occupation must end. And he said, it's not an occupation. Well, here we are 7 years later, 50,000 troops still there, and permanent military bases. And that's what I learned in the Marine Corps, why we're there, why this is not a mistake. It wasn't a humanitarian mission. It's about an empire. And I want to underscore what the military family spoke about before. We're against the war, not the warriors. A lot of people join the military to want to serve their country for good reasons, and they find out it's not quite what they thought. There are Marines in our community right now who just got back from Helmand Province, and were told they had 18 months before they'd be redeployed. They're now being redeployed in 9 months. And it's tearing their families apart. They're very upset. And one of the ways we ended the war during the Vietnam era was we had an anti-war movement, the Vietnamese resisted. We also had resistance within the military. And I was drafted, well, my draft number was low. I enlisted in the Marine Corps when my number came up, out of the anti-war movement. First thing I did besides enlist in the Marine Corps was join the American Servicemen's Union, which was part of the GI resistance. Of course, the brass wanted to know all about that as soon as I showed up for boot camp. In any case, I was a Marine Corps officer training at Quantico, and they had this magazine that they sent to us called Leatherneck. And there was an article about how the Persian Gulf was the Archimedes point of world geopolitics. Now, you know, Archimedes was this Greek, and he figured if you give me the right lever and the right lever point, I can move the world. In other words, that's the power point. And here I was, Nixon had won a landslide, and I thought they were going to re-escalate in Vietnam. That's what I was worried about. And I read that article, and I realized the target, really, the most important one, was the Persian Gulf. And they said it wasn't just about the oil, it was about the location. They said if we had air bases in Iraq, our long-range bombers could hit every city from London to Tokyo. And I said, those are our allies. What are they talking about? And it just struck home that this was about dominating the world, what our defense policy documents call full spectrum dominance: air, land, sea, space, and now cyberspace. We're the only country in the world with foreign military bases. We have 800 of them. That's our empire. No other country in the world has that. And our military-industrial complex reaches into the power structures of countries all over the world. That's how we can go to Haiti and grab Aristide and put him on a plane to Africa, where he's been in exile for 7 years, and the U.S. is trying to prevent him to come back to Haiti now. That's how we can go into Honduras and grab a guy in his pajamas, the president of the country, and send him out of the country. A coup that just happened last year, backed by our country. And that's how we can have permanent military bases in Iraq. The strategy is not to leave Iraq. That's the geopolitical PowerPoint. And that's why we're there. So what does that mean? We can't just suppose one war or another. We got to change the system. We got to dismantle this military-industrial complex. $1.2 trillion will be spent on military in the coming fiscal year. You've heard about the Department of Defense budget. That's about $700 billion, counting the supplementals for war. But there's money in the State Department, the Energy Department, the Veterans Administration, and that's about 1/3 of the global budget, including Social Security and Medicare. And that's why we don't have what we need here for our schools, our transportation, to create jobs, and those kinds of things. So I think we have to realize we're up against a system, and we've got to change it fundamentally.
Yeah, we gotta change the system that allows for us to spend so much killing people in other countries and neglecting people in our own country. Next, I want to invite Ashley Sears from Act Now to Stop War and End Racism.
Thank you, Ursula, and thank you everyone for coming today. 8 years after the launch of the criminal Iraq War, which has taken over 1 million lives, the United States government is threatening a new war, this time in Libya. The US, the United Nations Security Council, Britain, and the European Union have already imposed sanctions on the Libyan government, and just last night authorized a no-fly zone. As we speak, France, Britain, and the US are preparing to bomb Libya. In 1986, the U.S. dropped 120,000 pounds of bombs in Tripoli and Benghazi in an effort to topple the Gaddafi government. You don't have to agree with the policies of the Gaddafi government, which in recent years has been more and more characterized by an acceptance of neoliberal capitalist methods, in order to recognize that a UN NATO intervention in Libya will not liberate the people of Libya any more than the U.S. invasion of Iraq liberated the Iraqi people. And so it is crucial for all anti-war and progressive people in the U.S. to stand together to oppose any U.S. intervention in Libya, whether through the U.S.-dominated NATO or through the U.S.-dominated UN. The U.S. government is not in the business of liberating people. It only takes action to protect the interests of big oil, the banks, and corporations. The lessons of Afghanistan, Iraq, and countless additional U.S. interventions reveal this to be all too true. Libya has the largest oil reserves in Africa, and Washington knows this all too well. It would like nothing more than to have a stable client regime in place that would allow U.S. bases on the ground and control of the oil supply. U.S. NATO intervention will not bring democracy or freedom to the Libyan people. There is no such thing as a quote-unquote humanitarian intervention for the U.S. government. If Washington truly supported democracy, it would cease propping up the brutal Saudi monarchy, stop supporting the suppression of protesters in Bahrain and Yemen, end all U.S. aid to the Israeli apartheid state, and close Guantanamo prison. So today we not only demand an end to the U.S. wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we say no to U.S. intervention in Libya. Money for jobs and education, not for war and occupation.
Money for jobs and education, not for war and occupation.
Is there anyone else that'd like to come up and say something to us assembled here? Oh, we have a song. We have a song for you. Welcome Ann Tiffany of the Central New York Raging Grannies.
Nancy, before we sing the song that I passed out, I want to talk a little bit about tomorrow. Tomorrow, a number of us will be gathering at the parking lot at Paradise Market. Over on the right-hand side as you go in, was a large grocery store that's now closed, so there'll be room to park.
On Erie Boulevard.
It's on Erie Boulevard, for those that don't know it, on the east side, past Thompson Road. What we're going to do is hold signs along Erie Boulevard. We have three sets of 4 signs each, and it'll be similar to, for those of us who remember them, the Burma Shave sign. It's kind of an experiment. I think it should be fun. We have other signs, so we would like to be up and down Erie Boulevard tomorrow from 12 noon to 1 o'clock. So if you can, please join us. We would welcome everyone. This is our chance to get our signs out there. The message is the same, of course, U.S. out of Iraq. Tomorrow is actually the date when the U.S. invaded Iraq. The Veterans for Peace are doing an action tomorrow at the White House, just around that same time, so we will be in solidarity. So now it's time for us to add our voices to this gathering. I think everyone has a copy of the song. If not, your neighbor does. So please join us in singing, Please Tell America. Please tell America, war can succeed. Stand beside her and guide her from this fight with the wisdom she needs. Stop the bombing, stop the missiles, tell the soldiers not to roam. Please tell America, bring the troops home. Please tell America, bring the troops home. One more time with a little more gusto. Now we know it. The words are wonderful. Please tell America, war can succeed. Stand beside her and guide her from this fight with the wisdom she needs. Stop the bombing, stop the missiles, tell the soldiers not to roam. Please tell America, bring the troops home. Please tell America, bring the troops home. Bring them home.
All right.
See you tomorrow at noon, Paradise Market.
All right.
Thanks a lot, and Nancy of the CNY Raging Grannies. And so, yeah, we hope to see a lot of people tomorrow noon at Paradise Market. And also, please mark your calendars for April 22nd. There's going to be a very large regional demonstration against the Reaper drones at Hancock Air Base. So we hope everyone will come out. So please stay in touch with us. Thank you.